Young Woman in the Sea is a biopic about the first woman to ever swim across the English Channel. This movie is based on the book by the same name. We follow Trudy Ederle, played by Daisy Ridley. She and her sister Meg, played by Tilda Cobham Hervey, grew up in the early 1900s with a passion for swimming. The two of them joined the Women's Swimming Association, which ends up being the stepping stone for Trudy to become a very successful competitive swimmer. She eventually decides that she wants to swim the English Channel, but because of the strict societal norms of the early 20th century, the men she has to navigate to make this happen prove to be as big an obstacle as the swim itself. So there are a lot of things that weigh down on Trudy in this movie. The core subject of this film is, of course, defiance. It's about resisting the patriarchal oppressions that were so prevalent in the 1920s. It's about showing people that women can accomplish great things and should be allowed the same privileges as men. Trudy really has to fight for opportunities, but the systemic sexism doesn't stop at stifling her swimming career, it also really pollutes it. From news headlines criticizing the supposed scandalous attire that female athletes wear, to being asked by press whether or not she's single rather than being asked about her career, Trudy and other women constantly have to deal with these observations that veer away from their actual achievements and focus on their stereotypical roles in society. So it totally makes sense for the patriarchy to be a large obstacle in this movie when you consider that it's about a record-breaking female athlete in the 1920s. But for a lot of this movie, it kind of felt like a one-note tune. With the exception of the forces of nature in The Big Swim, the vast majority of the conflict in this movie came from those old-fashioned social constraints. I'm definitely not trying to say that they should have turned the sexism dial down. I'm saying that I think they should have turned other dials up. Perhaps adding more friction beyond the social constraints could have introduced more variety and made the movie feel less repetitive. They also could have dialed up Trudy's personality a bit by adding more dialogue that isn't just about swimming or resisting oppression. She's a very successful athlete who stands strong and defiant against sexism. Those are great qualities, but she often feels like she's just being reduced to tropes. It would have made the story so much more inspirational, seeing some more nuance in her, because then it would have felt more like a real person made this achievement and not just a movie character. The same can be said about a lot of characters in this movie. Many of them feel pretty two-dimensional. For example, her dad and her two swimming coaches feel extremely narrowly written. Just about every time one of them was on screen, before anything is even said, you just know what the nature of the conversation will be. The writing and dialogue can also occasionally be pretty cliche. For example,
Trudy, you don't have to do this.
I don't know. Seems like a nice day for a swim.
yeah, it's times like this where you really start to go, oh yeah, I am definitely watching a PG Disney movie, all right. That also totally contradicts how Meg, her sister there, was supporting her leading up to that point. It was just a cliche moment that the screenwriter thought would be moving, but it just didn't make any sense at all. So visually, this movie was pretty spectacular. Everything from the beautiful 1920s production design to the very polished cinematography. It feels like a big budget movie. It really transports you through time with its charming visuals, even if that time wasn't really very charming to live in. Daisy Ridley is also pretty good here. I wouldn't say that she's at the top of her game here. I actually liked her performances in her last couple of movies I reviewed a bit more, but she still gives a good performance in this. It might not seem that way from the clip that I just played, but she did the best she could with the script that she was given. So the ending of this movie was much more touching than I thought it would be. It was surprisingly very big and glorious. It kind of caught me off guard there at the end because for the majority of the film, my feelings about it were just meh. But it did have a really strong last 15 minutes. It's hard not to feel like you're a part of that celebration and excitement. It definitely makes up for the third act, otherwise lacking suspense. I don't want to give this movie too hard of a time for this because honestly the same can be said about a lot of other movies. But when she's going for the big swim, there just isn't any doubt that she will send it. And that is largely because of the movie's very endearing tone. Even if you knew nothing about the real Gertrude Ederle, you certainly wouldn't think at any point, oh goodness, is she going to make it? What if she doesn't make it? None of that at all. And by the way, that shouldn't be a spoiler because it's all over this movie's marketing and even in its log line that it's about the first woman to successfully swim the English Channel. So you read the title. Overall, this movie was inspirational, but pretty sappy. There are cliches all throughout this movie that really left me rolling my eyes. But the story was plotted well, and it had enough conflicts and objectives to keep it interesting, so it's not by any means a terrible film. It's fine. If you're going to enjoy this one, you are definitely going to have to set your expectations. at generic cinema that plays it safe across the board. Just don't expect a groundbreaking biopic. This is a PG Disney movie, and it really feels like one all the way through. Thank you for watching this review. Please give it a like if it brought you any value at all. Next week, I'm not sure what I'm reviewing because it just depends on what limited releases I can find screenings for, but I will be back with more reviews next week.